Guru Maharaj says, passport is not enough. You need a visa. But don't even have a visa proper for entry into the spiritual world, but need to know all the intricate secrets of Krishna conception. The Guru Maharaj said, in this world, men and women are more discreet about their activities. And you want to know about this, that, and the other thing, about divinity. That's not going to be looked upon favorably in your visa application. That's the intellect falling short. The bee trying to taste the honey, but the glass doesn't see that it's the glass barrier. The glass barrier of curiosity, intellect, the need to know. Guru Maharaj said, just as karma, it's clear karma has to be given up. He's saying curiosity has to be given up too. Gyan, the desire to know. Anyone who wants to know is too suspicious, that's not good. You're granted a visa when it's been determined by the country you're seeking admission that it's in their interest to bring you in. We already know you have some interest. I'm chanting Hare Krishna. Like, good for you. But it has to be in their interest to bring you in. They're looking for servitors. They're not looking for bead counters. Guru Maharaj said, you don't see pictures of Braja Gopis chanting on Japamala. But you see pictures of them like churning butter, Bande Nanda Brajastrinam Padarenum Abhikshnasa, Yasam Harikatod Gitam Punati Bhuvanatrayam. And when they're doing that, they're singing about Krishna. And it's purifying everywhere. Everywhere that has the ears to hear. That's not an objective thing. We told Science of Devotion by Rupa Goswami. So part of science is to show these things cannot be that particular thing. So then when it comes to identifying the substance, what it is, it's helpful. Without controlled senses, there's no question of spontaneous love. The slogan says, Vikriditam brajabadu viritam javishnu shradhanvatonu shranaya dattavarnayedya bhakti param bhagavati pratilabjakamam hridrogamashu api achinoti something, dhira. So hridroga means heart disease, right? Expressed in uncontrolled senses. So without the senses being relatively controlled, that one is going to express raga bhakti. That means spontaneous love here. Raga marg. Now we're back to Saraswati Thakur's cautions. He shed 100 gallons of blood to show what Madhura Rasa is not. Saying, if this is not there at the basis, then they may be telling that it's spontaneous love, but it is mundane, because the senses are not controlled. So they're taking divine things and making them, in his words, vulture food, saying the senses are like vultures. So if the senses are under the control of lust, right, then there's no question of expressing spontaneous love, which means here, raga bhakti, raga marg. So there's vidhi marg. They have to gradually come under control. And then from that position, dhira, undisturbed, no sense disturbance. Then when they hear the divine pastimes of Radharani, Krishna, and Braja Gopis, that will awaken spontaneous love, loving sentiments within them. Otherwise, we'll project that our experience of mundane love, will project that as being, will impose that idea on spontaneous love of raga bhaktas, and that's an offense against divinity, to think these pastimes are mundane, like the mundane affairs between men and women. So why is Sukadeva Goswami the speaker of the Bhagavatam? Because it's first certified, ascertained, he has no interest in the mundane love affairs between men and women. His senses are under control. And in that state, hearing about the pastimes of Radha and Krishna, spontaneous love, raga bhakti, is awakened in him, and he appreciates that. So it's to show that they're two different things. One is egocentric, the other is theocentric. Atmendriya, to satisfy one's misconceived self. Krishnendriya, to satisfy the senses of Krishna. Rishikena Rishikesha Sevanam Bhakti Ruchite. Devotion, what to speak of raga bhakti, means at its basis, beginning, middle, and end, it's for Krishna. That's the purpose of the why anything is being done. It's how do you say, envisioned from the beginning for the pleasure of Krishna, and by extension his devotees. Not that I'm thinking something about myself and then I realize that and I'm willing to share part of what I achieved with Krishna. That's not Krishna bhakti, right? Anya abhilashita shunyam jnana karma adyanavritam. It has no connection with jnana and karma. Anukulyena krishnanushilanam. It's what's lilanukul or krishnanushilanam, favorable to Krishna. Not, oh, I like doing this. I like doing this within Krishna consciousness. And we see the idea that someone whose senses are completely out of control, they will hear the pastimes of Radha and Krishna, and that will somehow cure them of their lust, is a God delusion. Shraddhanvato anushanayad. So with faith, anusranaya, hearing from proper authorities. Some person came to Gurudev in Vrindavan talking about manjaris and this, that, and the other thing. And Gurudev was told, first of all, he said he didn't know anything about it. But the man insisted, and it was like English as a second language or anything. And Gurudev's pleading ignorance of all this. And then he's saying, no, Krishna and he said, Krishna and little girls. That's what he said. And Gurudev went, oh, Prabhu. He said, I can understand Krishna having loving pastimes with older girls, but with little girls, this is too much. Please. Then he got up and he said something in relation to the Guru Varga. And he said, that's all they told me. If they tell me anything more, I'll get back to you. Read Chaitanya Charitamritam. they're not just stories. It's the perfect expression of the ultimate reality and how to make your approach. So we hear in the Antya Lila, Pradyumna Misra, he goes to Mahaprabhu to hear Krishna Katha. Right? Mahaprabhu, Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Radha Krishna Nahayanya. Radha and Krishna combined, Radha Bhava Subolita, Krishna enveloped in the heart and halo of Radharani. Pradyumna Misra, a qualified devotee, asked Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, can you tell me about Krishna Katha? And what does Mahaprabhu say? Krishna Katha Ami Jani Na. Like Gurudev, I don't know. He said, but I know who does. And that is Ramananda. I heard from him. You can hear from him. You have my approval, permission, and recommend. Go hear from Ramananda. This story is it's not just a story, it's pastimes, Leelana, perfectly constructed. Then what happens? He goes to see Ramananda, and we're told, what is Ramananda doing at that time? He's written a play called the Jagannath Ballabh Natak, a drama. Who is Jagannath Ballabha? Anyway, and there are girls known as Devdashi. Means from their childhood, they belong to the deity. Right? And they're meant for the pleasure of the deities. So Ramananda Roy is teaching these two girls how to enact this play he's written. And because they will need to express by gesture and movement and dance ecstatic emotions, he, who we should remind everyone at this point, is Vishaka Saki of Lalita Vishaka. So Vishaka Saki can say, when this verse comes, here's how you will express it in this way. But they need to be trained and cared for. So what are we told there at that time? Ramananda is massaging their bodies with oil, and they're naked. So these girls, they're naked, he's massaging their bodies with oil, including the private parts of their bodies. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the sannyasi, told Pradyumna Misra, you should hear from the Grihastha, Ramananda, who's massaging the naked bodies of two dancing girls. That's who you should hear Krishna Katha from. So then we could think, well, is this not the very violation of what we just spoke about 15 minutes ago? That's what Pradyumna Misra is thinking. On some level, his mind is disturbed. His heart is disturbed. He's somewhat confused. But the attendant, finally, Ramananda comes and says, how may I serve you? And at this point, he says, I just wanted your darshan. Now that's been achieved, my dandavats. And he goes. Then Mahaprabhu, he meets Mahaprabhu again, and Mahaprabhu said, did you hear Krishna Katha from Ramananda? And he said, no, I just gave my dandavats. But Mahaprabhu can understand that there's some doubt, some apprehension in his mind. And he tells him that Ramananda is a prakrita deho. It appears as though he's embodied, that he's a human being, embodied, but he's not. He doesn't have even a trace amount of exploiting tendency within him. And his body is cent% spiritual. And then to underscore his position further, Mahaprabhu says, as a sannyasi, he said, if I hear the name of a woman, I get a reaction internally. He said, if I see a statue of a woman, or the representation of the form of a woman, it can disturb my mind. But not Ramananda. So you go and hear from him. So both things are dealt with here. That yes, Pradyumna Misra went away, taking him, that if this is a man who is having mundane relationships with women, we are not to hear Krishna Katha from him. That shouldn't be lost upon us. Rightfully, he's saying, if that is the case, then he is right to withdraw, to not hear from someone whose senses are full of lust, right? And the most intense type of lust, which is, sexual. But Mahaprabhu is telling him that's not the case with Ramananda. In fact, he's so far beyond it all. He has a divine form. He doesn't have a mundane body. He doesn't have a trace amount of an exploiting tendency in him, so much so that he can massage these naked girls with his own hand, including their private parts, and there's nothing untoward about it. And that's the person who is taken to be the Ragamarg Diksha Guru of Mahaprabhu. And what is and before someone says, well, I know someone like that. Really? Mahaprabhu says to Pradyumna Misra, Ek Ramananda. There aren't two. So you go and hear from him. So he returns with this kind of recommendation from Mahaprabhu, and Ramananda says, what service can I do for you? And he said, oh, I would like to hear Krishna Katha from you. And Ramananda, what type of Krishna Katha? He said, oh, what you told Mahaprabhu on the banks of the Godavari River, I'd like to hear that. And we're told Ramananda begins in the morning, speaks through the afternoon, they're not eating, into the late afternoon, and to the early evening. So he engages in some intense Krishna Katha for maybe 8-10 hours. So Bikriditam Brajabadu Viricham de Vishnu. So some Sahajiyas, they will say, well, you're saying you first become cured of the disease, then you can take the medicine. Gurudev had a nice response to this. He said, no, the topics of Radha and Krishna and their divine pastimes with Braja Gopis are the ultimate medicine, no doubt. He said, but just like we know Gurudev was fascinated by homeopathic medicine. And he said, just like homeopathic medicine, you have to identify not only what is the medicine, but what is the potency, then the dosage of that potency of that medicine. And he added to that, and your time for healing must have arrived. And my own example, based upon what I've heard from Guru Maharaj and the scriptures, and is that sometimes separation is compared to snake bite, having been bitten by cobra, that type of suffering. Now, you can say, well, what is the cure for that? Is cobra venom. Right? The antidote is made from that substance. But it only has that effect when you're suffering from snake bite. Right? So really, when someone is afflicted, really and truly feeling separation from Krishna, they can't tolerate it anymore. Not out of curiosity or fantasy, but someone's heart cannot tolerate being separated from Krishna. To that afflicted heart, this will be the antidote. It'll be the cure for their suffering heart. Tava katamritam, tapta jivanam, kavipir iditam, kalmasha apaham, sravana mangalam, srimadatatam, bhuvi grinantite, burida jana. Right? That's the method employed by the Braja Gopis. And this should be noted. All suffering is due to separation from Krishna. All suffering. Whether it's the suffering of the conditioned souls or the anguish of separation experienced in the hearts of the Braja Gopis, the cause of all suffering is separation from Krishna. And the cure for separation from Krishna is to hear about him from his devotees, and then to kirtanam, reproduce what we've heard from his devotees. Sravanam kirtanam. Rupa Goswami describes, and Bhaktivinoda Thakur and elsewhere are called Purvarag, which is very interesting. What happens before meeting. So, as I've mentioned many times, Rukmini, she says, Shrutva gunan bhuvana sundara shrindva, hearing about you. She hasn't met Krishna yet. By hearing about him, though, she has. Some conception has come to her about the form of Krishna's quality, everything. Her, we take in a big way. We say, oh, it's Rukmini, she knew him before. It's not like that. She had not met him. The wives of the Yajnik Brahmins, the Viprapatnis, they hadn't met Krishna. They'd only heard about him from fruit sellers and others in Vrindavan. They heard about him. By hearing about him, they got, see, you could have a general idea, but if you realize at a particular advanced stage of devotion, by hearing, they're getting a very precise conception of the form. So it's mysterious, Achinta Beda Abed. Having not met, but through hearing, they're meeting, but it's creating a hunger to meet. So that's why we're advised to culture separation. I say, well, if we haven't met, how can we culture separation? By hearing, the mystery is that by hearing about Krishna, some conception comes to you, whether vague or more refined or substantial. And gradually, some hunger develops. Like, a cheap example would be that in this world, babies, they're hungry before they've eaten. right? And then they are fed. So this is a mysterious thing. You say, well, how can you have the hunger? Well, you can awaken in you by hearing about Krishna, can awaken a hunger and a sense of loss. So beautiful, and what's been lost to me, now it's compelling. So hunger, in this sense, hunger precedes tasting and is a necessary component for taste, is hunger. So separation is a necessary component for relishing union. But we are duped into thinking that by the direct approach we'll get a superior experience than serving his agent or agency. So we have to be educated. Rasaraj Mahabhav Duyakarup, Mahabhav Swarupini Radha Thakurani. She can extract, she's the predominated half of Krishna's better half. She can extract the highest quality and highest quantity of rasa from Krishna. And Hladini Shakti Pustikar, and nourish her servitors with that substance. And Guru Maharaj said, once you have a taste of that, Mahabhav, which is beyond the constitutional capacity of a jiva soul to experience, Radharani, out of gratitude to her servitors, gives them a taste. He said, once you've had a taste of that, what to speak of all other taste, all other rasas become tasteless. That's our Guru Varga. Should we think they're light? Guru, heavier than the Himalayas. Gangbhir, deep, dive deep into reality. Sat, meaning existence, the existential position. Chit, cognizance or awareness that I exist. This is what separates us from innate matter. Right? The chair, the table exist, but they have no awareness of their existence. We can observe them because we're conscious observers. And we can, by this conscious observing principle, understand minimally our own existence. Right? But so, sat, chit, then a third aspect comes into awareness, that I exist for some purpose. It's not that we live in a vacuum. So, anandam, sat, chit, anandam, pleasure, happiness, joy, ecstasy. Consciousness allows me to feel those things. Consciousness allows me to feel happiness, pleasure, joy, ecstasy, love, affection. But then we have to also acknowledge it also allows me to feel sad or unhappy, pain, suffering. Consciousness can feel the full spectral range of emotions, and pain, pleasure. So the common stereotype about spiritual culture is that the spiritual person is always smiling and like happy Buddha. There's the full range. None of these emotions shall be eliminated from the palette of possibility, of possible emotional expression. So that means then we can't carry a stereotype of what is happiness into the spiritual domain. Are we going to try and approach this with our rational minds? If we do, we won't understand anything that she's talking about. But if we will leave our minds at the door, there's some places where you enter, they make you take off your coat and hat, right, and give them to someone, and then you go inside. You have to take off the coverings of the soul, intellect, all these things, leave them at the door. Jnane prayasam rupashanam anteva. Jivanti sanmukharidhan bhavadiya bhartam stane stita shruti katam dhanuvan manobir ye prayaso jito piyasi taistrilokyam. It's Brahma's advice. Leave your mind at the door. Leave your intellect at the door. Don't try to measure him. Pam bhakti yoga paribhavita hrit saroja ase shutekshita pato nanunata pungsam. Ashe Shrutekshita Pato. Take the path of seeing by hearing, not what make your assessment on objective visualization, but subjective visualization, right? Going towards Atma, the Atma plane. And people, being uneducated about that, think that there's no possibility for love and affection in that plane. Enlightenment is seen as some kind of monotonous state where one is mainly relieved from the suffering of the negative world. So being in a neutral position is like, finished with that. Now, and that's a so-called happiness. And if we want to give it some credence, in the language of Veda and Puranic literature, Brahmananda, the happiness, generic spiritual happiness, just realizing the essential spiritual nature of everything, and there's a type of anandam or happiness from that. How much so? Brahmananda bhavedesha chet paradha guni krita naiti bhakti sukham bodhe paramanu tulamapi. It's a sloka quoted by Rupa Goswami, where he's saying, if you take that, first of all, he's saying, the happiness of Brahmananda is so great that those experiencing that have no desire for mundane erotic pleasure, which is generally taken to be the highest form of material and most intense form of material pleasure. They're beyond that. They've overcome that. So many think, well, that's very great then. Must be very great, wonderful, ecstatic. But Rupa Goswami says, if you take that pleasure and multiply it 1 trillionfold, it won't be equal to an atomic fraction of the pleasure derived from Krishna consciousness. Anandamayo Vyasat in the Vedanta, saying the infinite, the nature of the infinite is anandam. He is constituted of anandam. It is not something he seeks to achieve. Right? He's in a Nirananda state and then trying to move from Nirananda to Ananda by some means. No, he is Anandam. The ultimate reality is love and happiness, beauty, charm, and sweetness. And what? Personified. Those things don't exist as impersonal, primordial elements. No, consciousness cannot be divorced of personality, actually. Neither can love or happiness. They're not independent elements. We're told, Anandamaya, he is full of Ananda by nature. Ishvara Parama Krishna, the opening declaration of the Brahma Samhita. God, the supreme God, Ishvara means God. Ishvara Parama, the supreme God is Krishna. Those are the first three words of the Brahma Samhita. It gets right to the point. The supreme God is Krishna. What is his nature? Satchidananda. He's eternal, omniscient, and anandam, full of ecstatic joy. And as Guru Maharaj was saying, not talking about an ocean of joy, ananda nidhi, saying not a static ocean, as if like, oh, static ocean of joy, but a dynamic ocean of joy. So it's saying that, and so what is it? Sat Chit Anandam Vigraha. He's the personification of eternality, omniscience, and ecstasy. That's the nature of the infinite. Right? So, and everything coming from him has that potential. So how is it realized? In this world, we try to acquire, control, consume things that are lower than us. That means the objective world, because we're basically innately subjective agents. Ma me vangsa jiva loke, jiva bhuta sanatana, being Krishna's angsas, or parts, we're of a similar nature. That means we have a Satchidananda potential, right? Finite in magnitude, but connect with the infinite. Or the option to offer ourselves in dedication to that which is not only higher than us, but infinitely higher than us. In the Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna says, Janma karma chame divyam evam yo veti tattvataha tyaktva deham punar janma naitimam eti sorjana. So he's saying, Janma karma chame divyam. If we talk about being born in this world, but Krishna, Ajopi-san avayatma bhutanam ishwaropi-san. What is one of his names? Aja, the unborn. So here he's saying, if you can understand how the unborn is born, how the unborn takes birth in Mathura, how the unborn takes birth in Vrindavan and engages in karma. What is his karma? Leela, childhood pastimes. If you can understand that his so-called janma and so-called karma are dibya, are divine and transcendental, these are pastimes, it's leela. If you can engage in this kind of culture, where can you engage in this kind of culture? In this life, under the guidance of Sadhu, Shastra, Guru, and Vaishnav. Jiva Goswami telling us, Achintya Shakti, understanding at the basis of all of this. The Lord has inconceivable potency, inconceivable attributes, inconceivable pastimes. How will you conceive what is inconceivable? Atakshri Krishna namadi nabhavye grahyam indriye. It says, Rupa Goswami is saying here, Krishna Nam is beyond what you can vibrate with your tongue, understand with your mind and your intellect. Then what are we doing? Nama Rupa Guna Lila, the form of Krishna cannot be seen with your eyes, mind, or intellect. The qualities of Krishna cannot be understood in that way. What to speak of the pastimes of Krishna. And we're dedicating our lives to this kind of culture. So then how is it possible? Sevan mukhe hijivaro shayameva spurtida. When, if it is out of service necessity, right? Pranipatena, pariprajna, seva. If it's seva, genuine heart necessity, then the spirit can descend and move the tongue, make the eye see, make the ear hear, and make the tongue taste, and everything else. Spirit can manipulate matter for spiritual culture. Matter cannot, the inverse is not possible. That the eye will see the image of Krishna, the deity, and have a divine vision. We'll vibrate Krishna Nam with our tongue, listen with our ear, and purify our hearts. The inverse is true. The descent of the holy name, form, qualities of Krishna through his agents, Sadhu, Shastra, Guru, and Vaishnav, can, through the ear, into the heart, out of service necessity, come outward from the heart in expression. Right? Then it can be a spiritual activity. So, Janma Karma Chame Divam, Evam Yo Veti Tattva Taha. Saying Krishna Tattva, Bhakti Tattva, Rasa Tattva, Lila Tattva, Radha Tattva. All of these things are described in the Ramananda Sambad. So Krishna is saying, if you can transcend objective experience and realize that actual substance is in the subjective world, right? The subjective evolution of consciousness that Guru Maharaj speaks of. If you can learn to look beyond this, right? Dive deep into reality. If you can go beyond the surface and into the depths of that, then what did he say? Tyaktva deham punar janma. When this body, which as I told in the last class, biological expression of the soul's delusion, if the soul's coming out of delusion and moving towards reality, right? Vastava vastu, actual spiritual substance, proper conception, moving out of misconception towards proper conception, then the body that was a construct of exploiting tendencies starts to dissolve. And the swarup, which is inverted comparison, constructed of dedicating tendencies, starts to express itself. That's why Saraswati Thakur could engage in ruchi pariksha. He could examine the spiritual taste of his disciples and see how they're evolving, where they're going spiritually, because it means their swarup is the spiritual taste that one can develop, right? Ruchi, ashakti, that's a good indication and a substantial indication of the actual personality and identity of that servitor when they start expressing such things. So the super qualified guru, they can start recognizing that. So here, Krishna is saying that. So when you give up this body, and he's not just talking about dying in the conventional sense, but being reconfigured from an exploiting agent to a dedicating agent. As we told in the beginning, atomic chit jivas are atomic chit, they're atomic particles of chit shakti. Now they're being enriched with the serving tendency. They're not going to generate mundane forms anymore, but rather, under the auspices of Yoga Maya, Tyaktva deham punar janma, said you won't have to take birth here again, but maybe you'll take birth somewhere else. Naitimam eti sorjana, saying they'll come and be with me. We think as aspiring servitors that periodically there may be some little inspiration coming from the upper world or from the divine. And Srila Prabhupada said, actually, it's coming at every moment. Only sometimes we're receptive to it. There's always, an incessant mercy signal coming to everyone. Guru Maharaj saying, without hunger, what can you taste? And if there's deep hunger, then everything will be relished. So we say, what's the greatest happiness? It must be from the position of the greatest hunger, which means is achieved in separation. From there, everything will be relish, a point of relish, pleasure and satisfaction and happiness. So we've been advised, move in that direction. That's the safe path for the devotees and realistic from our present position. So we're fortunate to be indicated to move in that direction. The greatest depth of feeling expressed sometimes even indirectly, like Pundarik Vidyanidhi. Aho bakiyam stanakalakutam jigam sayapayadapyasadvi lebhegatim datruti uchitam tatonyam kamva dayalum sharanam brajema. This sloka moved him in such a way as he could not contain his feelings, which were ecstatic feelings, ecstatic emotions. Like Gurudev had something called emotion or devotion. That means in a superficial sense. But when we're dealing with someone like Pundarik Vidyanidhi, whom Mahaprabhu called Prema Nidhi, and we're talking about ecstatic emotions. Right? And just a very simple verse saying, if when Putana approached Krishna with murderous intentions, we know in the guise of a wet nurse, with the approval of Yashoda, Rohini, and Krishna, not only she had anointed her breast nipple with poison. Krishna sucked the poison, the milk, her pran, life air, everything. Sucked the life out of her. And she was elevated to Datri, means like nurse, mother, like the equivalent of a mother position. So beyond liberation into the mother zone. So he's making the point, or what's moving him, he's saying, if this is how Krishna treats those whom have approached him with murderous intentions, then we can't even begin to conceive how he would respond to those who approach him either neutrally or in servitude or in friendship or vatsalya, etc. That's the point. Each one like on a Richter scale of magnitude, right? So much greater, right? Not just marginally greater. It's not that one is Madhura Rasa is marginally greater than Vatsalya Rasa. Like on a rasic Richter scale, it's tremendously sweeter and more enhanced, and contains everything before it that preceded it. As earth contains ether, water, all these other elements are in earth, and it produces aroma. And the aroma implies all those things before it. So that made Pundarik Vidyanidhi come out. When Mukunda Dutt detected the apprehension on Gadadhar Pandit, he didn't say like, oh, let me say some very confidential sloka about Krishna and the Braja Gopis so he can understand who this man is. Why didn't he do that? That's not what he did. He quotes this verse, Aho Bakiyam, and what's in the Kamva Dayalum Sharanam Brajam. Who is a more merciful Lord to take shelter of than Krishna? That's the verse that he sings. Because he's a substantial Vaishnava, he's real, he's not a poser. Has to rush to some superficially erotic thing about Krishna and the gopis to make people think, oh, he's got something. Like the posers. those dealing in counterfeit substance. And we know in this world, if you have counterfeit notes, it's not just people like, oh, well, no, you're arrested. Right? Ignorance is no excuse. If you possess counterfeit notes, it's a criminal, punishable offense for dealing in counterfeit currency. Right? It's a serious thing. So if it's serious in this world, a punishable offense for dealing in counterfeit substance, then what to speak of in the spiritual world? How much more deplorable that is to deal in counterfeit substance, to cheat others. The fact that others accept counterfeit notes is not a wonderful thing. Right? Is not a cause of celebration or joy. It's deplorable. Right? So what to speak of when applied on the spiritual side? Thematically, consistently, the key, if you want to say, to unlocking all of this divine sentiment, emotion, is separation. Right? As Srila Gurudev said, who could speak when, his double entendre, irony, whatever. I mean, he said it in very blunt terms once because he was a little upset. He said, even a goat understands the joy of union. That's what he said. I was like, "Bleh." That's what he said. Even a goat understands the joy. I remember seeing in Calcutta when they herd these goats toward the slaughterhouse, and you can see they have the ones who were selected or indicated. They had a little red piece of paint on their neck. Like anyone painted, they were put into a group, and then there's a guy herding them toward the slaughterhouse. And I believe Prabhupada used this as an example. It's like, and as they're waiting to get slaughtered, right, they're waiting in line to get slaughtered. Right. One goat, a male goat, will mount a female goat. Right. They're going to be slaughtered in like 15 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever. So he says, even a goat can understand the joy of union. He's saying, but who can understand that there is joy in separation? That is really a key to unlocking divine subject matter. And he quoted Srila Rupa Goswami's sloka where he says, Pida bir navakala kuta katuta garvasinivasino nishandena, etc. Prema sundari nanda nandana paro. Right? That he gives a very peculiar description saying it's like suffering the effects of cobra venom while bathing in some nectarine shower. These two things simultaneously. And they're saying, if you want to understand really Krishna consciousness, you have to be able to hold these two things simultaneously in your core consciousness. Hemorrhaging as if you've been bitten by cobra, you're suffering the effects of cobra venom. And simultaneously being bathed in some incredibly sweet nectarine shower. So pain and joy at the same time. The most intense pain yielding the most intense joy. This is way beyond what Freud had in mind. not to just convert neurotic suffering into ordinary suffering, but to extraordinary suffering, divine suffering, the pangs of separation. That force will, by affection's force, draw the heart toward Krishna conception. Guru Maharaj liked to quote the poet Shelley, where he said, "Our sweetest songs are those that tell the saddest tales, heartbreaking love songs, heartbreaking love stories." Some ladies, for example, were watching heartbreaking love story. Say a little group, they're watching a heartbreaking love story. Crying, see all are crying, some tissues. And some man enters the room seeing them all crying, like, and think, oh, let me put on another movie. Watch something, they're going, no, don't touch it. Why? They're crying and suffering, their hearts are breaking by watching this, but they can't stop watching. Because it's another type of joy, deeper than the smiley kind. We know, even by a simple analysis, the greatest love stories are they're painful. In music, they have what they call torch songs, and there's if someone's their heart is on fire, they've been separated from their beloved. The Ramayana is there, Romeo and Juliet. There's so many other stories. And what are they based upon? That the lovers are separated. And this is supposed to be the true test of love, is does it stand in separation? And to what degree? So when there is union, there's one level of heart that's achieved. In separation, a deeper level of heart is achieved. But that is painful. This is the mystery of Krishna consciousness. It's the mystery of the pastimes of Krishna. It's the mystery of Krishna culture. Is that the greatest substance of Krishna consciousness will be mind and separation. And what Srila Guru Maharaj coined, the original phrase, union and separation. In separation, there can also be union. Kaviraj Goswami tells us, Bahye Vishajalahoy, Bitore Anandamoy, Krishna Prema Adbhuta Charit. The Adbhuta Charit, wonderfully astonishing characteristic of Krishna Prema, the highest type of Krishna consciousness, is that although externally one appears to be suffering, internally they're relishing some extraordinary type of sweetness. So we cannot have a stereotype about what is happiness in Krishna consciousness. So the pastimes of Krishna and the material world called Prapancha Lila, they're going from one universe to another universe, 125 years to another universe, like that. So in glossing this sloka, Sanatana Goswami Prabhu says, yes, that devotee, they will get, what do you call it? Gopi Garba, Gopi Janma. They will appear in the womb of a gopi in a universe where Krishna Lila is extant. And they'll be born there. And that will be their entrance point into pastimes. So what are some examples we hear? The Vipra Patnis, the wives of the Brahmins. They haven't, technically speaking, they haven't seen Krishna yet. They've been born from gopis, or in this case, they're Brahmins, but the gopis are in similar position. They're born in Vrindavan, and they're hearing from fruit sellers, extraordinary pastimes that are going on in Vrindavan, of this boy, Gopal, of Krishna. The other day, Gopal, he punished the Kaliya serpent. The cowherd boys saw Gopal with Aghasura, with Putana. They're hearing all of these pastimes. And Rupa Goswami, in one place, describes it as Purva Rag, means there's a type of rag, of bhakti, that bhaktas experience when either they've been separated for a little while or have not met. So that means even in these descriptions, they're developing this eagerness, this irresistible eagerness to meet and be with Krishna. It's real and it's substantial, right? Tatta lolyam mulam ekalam janmakotri sukriter nalabhyate. What you won't get for 10 million births of doing the right thing, meritorious activities, they're getting now by hearing about Krishna through Nama Rupa Guna Lila, by hearing his pastimes. Krishna conception is substantially entering their consciousness so that they get the opportunity to actually associate with him. And then on top of this, what does Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur say? In the beginning of the 10th canto, and it says why he's noted for interpretation. The sloka will say something as simple as, the moon rose in the eastern horizon, the scent of jasmine filled the air, and the Lord surveyed the environment and acknowledged this was a good time for the rasa pastimes. Right? Then Vishwanath Chakrabarti will say, the eastern horizon is not the wife of the moon. So, and then he'll start interpreting, meaning that it's an indication of paramor, rasa. So he's saying these very simple things about the moon rising, the atmosphere becoming fragrant with particular, he's interpreting as some divine indications that Krishna turns to his Yogamaya potency and expresses his desires to engage in rasa. And we're told today's Ekadashi, Guru Maharaj mentioned that Saraswati Thakur gave some mundane aspects of Ekadashi, some divine aspects. On the mundane side of things, we discussed this a little earlier today, about the influence of the moon. We cannot deny that there are lunar influences, right? Especially women cannot deny that there are lunar influences. They know this thing is affecting their psycho-emotional state, we can say, right? It's a verifiable sort of thing. So Saraswati Thakur is saying, at this time, the ras in the body, there's a greater flow. So part of fasting is to create a balance, because the enjoying tendency is stronger at this time. By eating food, either fasting or eating foods that are non-stimulating, it'll keep the balance of the aspiring servitor and let them stay focused on serving. But still, that's a mundane aspect of it. It's interesting, like biological type information. But then he says something deeper and more profound, that just as our tendency for enjoyment is greater at this time, in the reality, in the supreme reality, Krishna's tendency for enjoyment is greater at this time. So this is why the devotees are sacrificing a part of themselves, offering their energy to Krishna for his enjoyment. Right? So in a similar way, Chakrabarti Thakur is making some observations here. So when Krishna, he gets this inspiration to enjoy in a particular way, the Yogamaya and Baladev, they're casting and scripting Krishna Lila. Right? So casting means selecting who will participate in these pastimes. Chakrabarti Thakur gives an example. He says, if a king tells his attendants he would like to enjoy some mangoes, then they go to a mango tree and they start picking many mangoes. And then they bring them back to the kitchen and then they say, all right, this is good for right now. These are good. These can be, they're ready for enjoying right now. This one, no, this needs a day more sunlight, heat. This needs a little bit longer. They get divided into groups. So he's saying when Yogamaya and Bala getting the indication that Krishna is to enjoy in this way, they round up these gopis and they say, these are qualified to participate now. This one maybe next time. This one a little bit longer. Saying just like, and we've done it with either mangoes or other fruit. You put them in a place where they can get heat and light and achieve maturity or fully ripen. So what is the equivalent of that? The parallel is separation, the fire, the heat of separation. So some cannot go. We're told everything is significant. So it says, Krishna sounds his flute, they start going. Some, we're told, they're going so fast, half-dressed, one earring, things on the wrong side, they're running to Krishna. You can imagine if after millions of lifetimes and pursuing Krishna consciousness, you get this call to, this is going to be your first encounter with Krishna, you might be a little besides yourself. So anyway, they're going, but then we're told, and some, they're pulling babies off their breasts, the ovens are burning, their husbands and fathers are trying to stop, but some are stopped. That's also hard to accommodate. You mean after millions and millions of lifetimes, finally the call comes for this type of seva, and you can't go? So what does that do to them? That puts them into a deep condition of separation. It generates the fire and heat of separation, and it's the arrangement of Yogamaya because they, for some reason, they weren't 100% qualified at that point. So by getting the call and not being able to go, the fire and heat of separation will bring them to the mature condition, and they'll go at another time. But at any rate, so what it means, Guru Maharaj sometimes calls Swarup Siddhi dress rehearsal, or when you pass through this stage, is saying then they can, at the end of that life, Vastu Siddhi, means being posted in Leela eternally. They're now fully qualified and they're posted in Leela eternally, under the guidance of the Swarup Shakti in the spiritual world. We could say the call of the Absolute. We're hearing about these things that are beyond our ability to express, and talking about them can be an aparad. But everyone's hearing some call. Anyone who's connected with the Krishna consciousness movement on some level is hearing, let's call it the call of the Absolute. It may become very specific in time, as we just discussed, but that it is the call of Krishna that's heard in the hearts of all the devotees. And, it's present in the form. Krishna consciousness movement. Hearing that call, you have to move. It's a movement. Movement is required. We hear the sound of Krishna's flute regulating all the servitors. This is part of Guru Maharaj's Gayatri explanation. Gayatri Murlista Kirtana Dhanam Radha Padam Dhimahi. So he said, one sound is telling the Braja Gopis one thing, the cowherd boy is another thing, the cow is one thing, his mother, all the different rasas, they're getting their cue and their guidance from this one sound. So Gurudev at the time was saying, well, how is that? Can be understood from many different points of view. So he said, and I don't know if you know this or not, maybe you have to be older to know it, but they some factories, they used to have a whistle at like 5 o'clock in the afternoon, like all the work, everybody's doing something, and then this whistle would go, "Doo!" And then and then they know, oh, like some people start going, this, it just tells everybody what to do. So Gurudev said, it's like that. Krishna blows his flute, not that it sounds like the sound I just made. No, it's not like that. They say when he makes this sound, that everyone hears the sound, then they know, oh, we have to go. Yashoda knows she needs to get everything ready for, they have to be bathed, Krishna and Balaram have to be bathed, and then offered the bhog, and Radharani and Braja Gopis know what they have to do, the cows, and everyone knows what they have to do, regulated by the sound of Krishna's flute. That's one thing. But when they're going on with their lives, their so-called lives, what's mentioned sometimes is they hear the sound of Krishna's flute, in the evening time, and they're doing many different things. It's told they're nursing babies, they're cooking things in the oven, they're cooking things on the stove, they're putting on makeup, they're doing many different things at that time. But how wonderful is the sound of Krishna's flute, we can't imagine. Right? Like achintya guna swarupam, achintya guna, inconceivable qualities. I think, how beautiful can it be? Guru Maharaj said that there was a rumor once that 100 years ago or so that Krishna, people in Vrindavan heard Krishna playing his flute on the bank of the Jamuna, and they all ran there madly. But Rupa Goswami tells us something. His plays are reality. Even here they say, if you want to tell the truth, write fiction. But this is way infinitely beyond that. So many wonderful things are expressed there. And they're real and true. They're not imaginary or exaggeration. Neti hasana kalpana. So in one famous sloka, talks about the effects of the sound of Krishna's flute. Rundan ambu britas chamatkati param kurvan muhustumburum dhyanam antarayan sanandana mukham vishmapitam vedasam otsukya balivir balim atulayam bhogendram agurnayam bindam anda kataha vitam abhito vad brahma bangshi dwani. Srila Gurudev loved this sloka very much. Ambu brita, the thundering clouds are stunned. And we're told in different places, the inanimate become animate, the animate become inanimate. The waves of the Jamuna freeze. Right? Tejo vari madam yata vinimayo. The rocks melt. Right? So the inanimate become animate, and the inverse. Rundan ambubritas chamatkati param kurvam muhustumburum, told that Tumburu is supposed to be the leader of the Gandharvas, the best singers in the universe, saying, "This is astonishing. I've never heard music like this." Right? In other words, the supreme musician, this is beyond what music we can make. We try to make heavenly music. This is infinitely beyond that. I'm astonished. Dhyanad antarayan, sanandana mukham. We're told the four Kumaras, right? Nothing can disturb their meditation. Where do they stay? Maharjana Tapasat, somewhere way up there. Actually beyond, that's their play as well. Tasyaravinda nayanasya padaravinda, kinjalka misra tulasi makaranda bayu. When they're outside Vaikuntha, and they look like little boys, Kumars, little brahmachari boys. They're very beautiful and effulgent. The Lord came to greet them and it said, Tulasi, tasyaravinda nayanasya padaravinda. The tulsi, that aroma, completely captured their consciousness. So nothing mundane can disturb them. Nothing can affect their meditation everywhere. But here we're told, when they hear the sound of Krishna's flute, they can't concentrate. They're the ultimate meditators. Now they can't concentrate. Their minds, the minds of the four Kumaras are spinning. And Brahma is astonished. Brahma is thinking, he has like inventory, big, spreadsheet of everything he's created. And this is not on the list. Saying, I would remember this if I'd made this. This is not something I did. Otsukya Bali. And so and if you look at what Rupa Goswami is doing so beautifully in his poetry, it's the sound of Krishna's flute, but it's penetrating the coverings of the universe. It's going like it's going around all the different, from Brahma, Loka, to where the Gandharvas are, the Kumaras, and now it's down at the bottom of the universe. Bali Maharaj, astonishing him. And then what does it say? Down further below, where Anantadev, with his head sitting, all the planets, they're said to be resting on his divine serpentine heads. Bogindrama Gurnayam. And Anantadev, the heads start going like that. Like dizzy. It's making him dizzy. He's going to faint. Anantadev is going to faint. All the universe, the planets, they're going to fall off. This is the sound of Krishna's flute. The effects. Like, so what the sound is, that we cannot, it is achintya guna. Inconceivable. But so what he's trying to do, by telling us the effects, we can get some idea. Bindam andagata, and it's saying it's piercing through the universe has like shells, 8 layers. They're cracking. It's penetrating them and then having all these effects upon those who can hear it. But Brahma Bangshi Dwani, when Krishna. But as Srila Gurudev said very beautifully, he said, but about what is Krishna fluting? He said, he is fluting about Radharani. That is his ultimate fluting matter. Radha Dasyam. But in response, So when Krishna's playing that, those gopis doing all those different things, sometimes it's said how Krishna, we told, is a thief in different ways and stealing. So the sound, by entering through their ears and into their hearts, has stolen their shyness, all of their qualities. It's stolen. Chakrabarti Thakur points out, Krishna wasn't interested in stealing their paraphernalia. They still have their earrings and their different things. But he's stolen all the wonderful things that are in their hearts. He's stolen from them. And now they're thinking they're going to chase that thief and return those things. But in doing, they're so besides themselves, senseless, that they forget what is an arm and an ear. What is the difference between an ear and an arm or a leg? Or everything? They're very confused. So they're putting some of the ornaments in the wrong place because they forgot those things. That's how seductive is the charm of Krishna. They've forgotten basic things that people know, like right from left, up from down, the difference between your ear and your knee, and many things. They're half-dressed. So they're leaving, and they're breastfeeding babies, cooking, dressing, doing all these different activities, and then suddenly leaving. These pastimes are inconceivable. But Chakravarti Thakur points out that in some instances, Yoga Maya creates duplicates. So some duplicate gopi is there with the husband, the family, and everyone, and the gopis in their real forms, they go to Krishna. That's one group. There are different ones. It's inconceivable. The gopis are offering themselves. They don't have mundane forms, actually. That's why Yoga Maya had to make some, so they can actually go. There's not any mundanity in them. So they're offering themselves wholesale to Krishna. So we're told they decorate themselves for Krishna's pleasure. They're trying to answer the call of the Absolute by offering themselves in his service. Vishwanath says, imagine those Braja Gopis, they hear the flute song of Krishna in the deep, dark Vrindavan forest. They leave their children, husbands, families, everyone, and run to Krishna in the dead of night, which means Arjapatam Chihitva, tagging the Arjapat, the Vedic culture, morality, everything. Okay? And when they reach Krishna, and this is what you can expect from Krishna, he's saying, how highly inappropriate this behavior. This is totally wrong. You should go home. He's rejecting them. And really, he's doing that, apparently. And we're told, they're so beautiful and so sweet. The Braja Gopis, their heads, the tears are streaming down them, and they're crying. And Vishwanath says, why? Because they know that Krishna is controlled by Krishna Prem, and he's rejecting them. So after this long pursuit, it could have been millions of lifetimes in the making, answering the flute call of Krishna and being rejected by Krishna. So they're crying. right? Thinking, we have no love for Krishna. Then why did we do all these other things? Leave our children, husbands, parents, family, community, everything, cross the veil. Then why did we do that? It's no prema gandasti darapi meharo. They're saying we're only making a show of love for Krishna. Because if we had a drop of the real thing, we wouldn't be in this situation. So it's just a show we're making, and to get some cheap name and fame. But they don't leave. They don't go back. This whole big buildup in the Bhagavatam to the Rasa Leela, and no sooner does it begin than it stops. Why? It's just starting, and then Krishna is gone, running after, searching for Radharani. Everything stopped. And then you would think, if you know something about Gaudiya ontology, then you could say, oh wait, later we hear, one Krishna for every two gopis, or feeling that one Krishna for every go through Prakash, Vilas, expansions. Why didn't he just expand himself for everybody and then go run after Radharani? He could do that too, but that's not what he does. Right? They're plunged into an ocean of separation. How heartbreaking. You've made it to the Rasa Leela, and now it stopped before it started. It starts and Krishna's gone. Is that some kind of a trick or cruel thing to do? Maybe in some instances, after millions and millions of lifetimes, millions of creations, they've made it to that point and Krishna vanishes? What kind of Lord are we searching for? When Saraswati Thakur is giving the Gayatri Mantram to his disciples, and remember, some of them are Sanskritians and have some understanding, their sanskar and everything. And Guru Maharaj is there, and so they leave, one or two, they go outside, and they're discussing, what is the meaning of this? And they're thinking about the Kama Gayatri, and Pushpaban, and these things. And Saraswati Thakur can overhear them with great eagerness discussing these things outside his window, right after their initiation. And Guru Maharaj is there. And Guru Maharaj said, Saraswati Thakur turned to him and he had this look on his face that was so painful, with such longing and lamentation, yet mysteriously beautiful. And he said, I have been trying to offer a flower to the holy body of Krishna for so long. And Guru Maharaj said that so long was to indicate millions of lifetimes. He's saying, as yet, I am unsuccessful. The leader who's giving the mantram expresses this lament. Is that meant to discourage us? Guru Maharaj will save us from the wrong understanding by telling us that he's saying, yes, Krishna consciousness is so high, so wonderful, that even if you don't get after millions of lifetimes, even if after millions of lifetimes you're on the verge of entering that divine pastime of Krishna, you're rejected, can't give it up, won't walk away, right? Won't stop the search, increased hankering, increased longing, increased earnestness. And that Krishna knows. So Vishwanath said, he's thinking, if now I remove myself right at this point, and they're plunged into an ocean of separation, which is sometimes compared to the timingil, the whale eating fish, being devoured by that. He's saying then, like the Dasavatar, Meena Sharira, the Matsya avatar. It's one of the why they're praying this way. To be saved by Krishna. We're drowning in an ocean of separation. Anyway, Vishwanath says, Krishna is saying, if at that time, when they're at the depths of separation, the peak of that longing and hankering, if I then appear, then we'll have a Rasa Leela. That's what he's thinking. So there's a method to the madness, as Shakespeare says. So, and you say, why would Krishna do it? Because he's addicted to that particular type of prem, which only comes out under the intense pressure of separation upon affection. That's when it's squeezed out, so to speak. So much addicted to that through the agency of Yogamaya is creating situations that will ensure that substance is generated, right? And that happens to be separation. Radharani and Braja Gopis, what does that say? Who they cannot tolerate the momentary blinking of the eye, that period of separation from Krishna. Anikananam chutir yugayate tamapashyatam kutila kundalam srimukam jate yada udikshitam pakshma kridrasham. In the Gopi Gita. They're cursing Brahma. The same divine ladies, they say, the Rasa Leela, we're told, lasted for a night of Brahma. Sahasra Yuga Parjantam Ahoryad Brahmanobidu. That means 4,300,000,000 years. It's that night, just the proverbial night, where they say, we wish this night would go on forever, that it would never end. Right? That's expressed in love poetry and love songs. It's a natural expression of the heart. They say, we wish this night it's that night that never ends. The night of, romance and dancing and and beautiful love. And what do they say? So we're told Yogamaya summoned all these nights together. So it lasts for 4,300,000,000 years because Krishna Leela employs the principle of contraction and expansion of time and space. And what sort of love and affection are they capable of? They say, it was like the blink of an eye. So Gurudev said, no amount of union will ever satisfy the devotee. They'll always be hankering for more. That's the nature of Krishna conception. And encrypted in that is a hopeful message to even us neophyte practitioners that we're not interested in achieving some, final stage, right? But rather it's, the search for Sri Krishna. Hey Radhe Brajadevi Ke Chalalite Hey Nanda Shunu Kutaha. Where are they? Where is Krishna? Kahan Krishna Prananath Murali Vadan Kahan Karan Kahan Pan Brajendra Nandan. Mahaprabhu is in the search for Sri Krishna. He's plunging the depths of separation. So they're saying that night, the Brahmaratri was like the blink of an eye in terms of union. But then what do we find? The inverse, contraction, expansion of time and space. The blink of an eye in separation is like a day of Brahma. Now they've taken it in another direction. Intolerable. They're cursing Brahma. You fool, you don't know how to make eyes. Why do they have to blink? Make unblinking eyes. And another place, Radharani is saying, I could have like fish eyes that are just always open and, unlimited Krishna. No interruption. What does Radharani say in Jagannath Balavan of Ramananda? Factoring in these things. She's saying, what I'm going to do the next time, I'm going to worship time. And it's described there very beautifully. Guru Maharaj used to sing this many times. She's the way what is the Vedic system to propitiate someone? You offer them an asan, then they sit on the asan, Then you get out the paraphernalia, right? You put the water, wipe their feet, dry the feet, offer the flowers, offer the incense, offer the panch pradeep, do all of these things, like arati. Radharani said, I'm going to do arati to time. Take time, put time on a beautiful throne, asan, and do my arati. And then when time is very happy and propitiated, he says, then I'm going to turn my attention to Krishna. Because the last time, it went like that. It was so fast. So what I have to do is control time. So Krishna, although we know ultimately the Bhagavatam culminates in his divine play with Radharani and Brajagopi, still his appearance, his pastimes with Nanda Yashoda, then with the cowherd boys, Kumar, Poganda, then Kishore. But on the way to the Kishore pastimes, well, afterwards actually, but all part of this, that we know to plunge the gopis' hearts in the depths of separation, where they yield the most superior type of Krishna prem. Akrura comes and takes Krishna out of Vrindavan. Srila Guru Maharaj will point out, we see Krishna's devotees suffering in different ways. Mother Yashoda suffering in separation from Krishna. Sometimes we heard she cried herself blind. The Braja Gopis suffering, sometimes called, it's compared to, they're like lost in an ocean of suffering and being devoured by the Timingila of separation. The Timingila is the, you can say, mythical fish who eats whales. Whale-eating fish. That's how big. Eats whales. And they said, we're being devoured by the Timingil of separation in this ocean of separation from Krishna. We hear the kokils. Up, up, up. Gurudev said, oh, it's two males competing for the affection of a female. And we know it's the parakia symbol. The kokil lays their eggs in another bird's nest, and the other bird raises them thinking they're their own. It's a symbol of parakia. Anyway, and then Gurudev says, he quotes this, Jaimini iti, Jaimini jopati, sabhishan kalanadam, kurbati kila ko kila kila kula taladam. And then he says, Radharani jap, she's going, Jaimini, 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 Jaimini. Why is she chanting the name of Jaimini? Because generally we know the sound of the kokil is like liquid sweetness. Thank you. Liquid sweetness. And it's reminiscent of the voice of Krishna. Sometimes Radharani's voice is compared to a kokil. It's just liquid sweetness is the sound of the kokil. And what does they do? It gets sweeter and sweeter and sweeter. It just keeps getting sweeter. So you would think, like the neophytes, the nectar hounds, who want sweet things, that hearing the kokil should make you feel happy. But Radharani is going, Jaimini, 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 Jaimini. In a very desperate way, fervently, she's chanting Jaimini. Why? Because Gurudev explained, it is their tradition that the girls of Vrindavan, everybody in Vrindavan, that it is said that when there's thunder and lightning, that to protect yourself from being struck by lightning, you should take the name of Jaimini Rishi. So when it's like in the sky, you go, Jaimini, Jaimini, and you won't get struck by lightning. So everybody chants the name of Jaimini Rishi. But why is Radharani chanting his name? Because in the Viraha Bhav, separation, like Das Goswami, Govardhan is the python coming to swallow him, Radhakund is the tiger's gaping jaws, and separation from Krishna, the sweet sound of the kokil that's reminiscent of the voice of Krishna is like lightning striking her heart. That's why she's going, Jaimini, Jaimini. Save me from being struck by the lightning of the sweetness of the voice of the kohil that's breaking my heart. And interesting, Srila Rupa Goswami in his Hangsadutta, it's so beautiful because Hangsadutta is spoken by Lalita to a swan to take a message to Krishna in Mathura. Someone could think is offensive, but it's balm above. It's sweet opposition man, where they're saying like, does he ever remember the two syllables Radha? But she says that, and the girl with her heart and the prem as, the hook was the prem and the heart was there. And then what did Krishna do? As Matsya, he ate the bait and left the hook, not captured. And as Kurma, that girl, she gave everything to him. And what did he do? Withdraw his beautiful limbs within his form and show a hard shell. So she's going through Das avatars in another way. Gopi vision. They can do that. When love and affection are put under the most intense pressure of separation, that's when the heart yields the most superior substance, the most superior type of love. And that's the kind of love that he's most addicted to. And that can only be achieved by apparently separating himself from them. But knowing that they're in this condition, he sends Uddhava as a messenger to give some message so that they won't give up hope, to relieve the anguish of separation that's in their heart. He goes with a letter. And we're told when Uddhava arrives, and it's a significant point that Guru Maharaj used in another context, that because he's doing everything properly, he first visits Nanda and Yashoda. Really, for many, but he's got the special message for the gopis, but first must go to the house, Nanda Bhavan, Nanda Yashoda. And while giving them the news of Krishna, the Braja gopis see the empty chariot outside of the house, and they start cursing it. It makes them angry, Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur said. That's their response to seeing this chariot. And they're thinking, because they remember when Akrura came on a chariot and took Krishna away from Vrindavan, the Brajagopis are not a fan of Akrura, right? His name's supposed to be not cruel, but they interpret it as no one's been more cruel. There's no one more cruel. It can also mean that. And even the name sounds like it, Akrura. So seeing this chariot, they're infuriated. And they think, it wasn't enough for Kamsa to take away, our life. But now he sent his agent to collect, because deprived of our lives, what we're just carcasses, he's sent his agent to collect our rotting carcasses, to take them back to Mathura for some sort of funeral pyre ceremony. They're very disturbed. But when Uddhava comes out, they see, oh, we're told Uddhava, he looks similar to Krishna, and Krishna gives his clothes to Uddhava. That famous verse that talks about honoring the remnants, prasadam, but also mentions clothing. Uddhava gets clothing from Krishna. So when they see him, he looks so much like Krishna that they're giddy. They become really happy. And they're thinking, who is this person? Just by looking at him, you remember Krishna. And then they get to know him, and he presents his letter, the letter from Krishna, where Krishna is saying, you should all learn yoga and how to meditate on God. So when you're feeling like this, you start doing yoga and meditating. You understand God's everywhere and everything. And you'll feel something. And this makes them angry. Brajagopis are not big on yoga. I say that to tease all the yoga folks. They're telling her, we're not yogis, we're gopis. We're not gyanis, we're not yogis, we're not karmis, gyanis, or yogis. We're gopis. You know who we are. And you know our hearts also. So why are you teasing us and with all of that? We should become yogis and start learning how to meditate. God's everywhere and everything. Or jnani, we should study. We're simple girls who want a loving, affectionate relationship with you. But at one point, Chakravarti Thakur says where the word adhoksaja is mentioned. Another meaning is adha aksaja. Aksaja means the eyes, and adha means for the eyes to go down. So it means to close your eyes. And Uddhava said, if you will now close your eyes, ladies, Krishna will appear. And they close their eyes, and Krishna appears in their hearts, and they're so happy. And some of them are thinking that the aperture, the iris in the eye, they're afraid he could get out. They want to close the f-stop of their eyes so that Krishna can't escape. They're so sweet and ecstatic and extraordinary. When Uddhava sees their reaction, saying, what sort of affection lies within the heart of the Brajagopis, their hearts? And meanwhile, while he's doing that, Radharani is lost in divine madness, which is represented as the Brahmar Gita. We know the big black bumblebee with the yellow rings and the pollen on his whiskers comes, and she takes him to be either a messenger from Krishna or Krishna. And she's in her man, loving anger, chastising this bumblebee like anything. Right? And that we can't speak about. We're not qualified. But Guru Maharaj could speak about it. And Balaji Maharaj and Ban Maharaj said, oh, this is your specialty. And they considered it a great honor, a great opportunity to hear him. And I once asked Guru Maharaj, as the final days were apparent, that I said, you once, I told Guru, he said he would once explain this. And I thought, this might be the last chance, and by saying some peripheral things, like, oh, you said, although you settled upon Chaitanya Saraswati, Navadvip for your final days, you had considered before that the Gangbir and before that Uddhav Kyari. And Guru Maharaj was like, oh yes, he's thinking about Uddhav Kyari. That's where the Brahma Gita is spoken. And now that his mind was there, I'm saying, you once told me you would express this. And Guru Maharaj started speaking. And although I'm accompanied, accustomed to extensively hearing him speak and parsing what he says and trying to understand it the best I can, this was to use a word of his, non-understandable. Fragments of divine feelings and emotions, just so extraordinary that I just kind of wanted to like, okay. And it automatically, he stopped after a while. So the pastimes of separation are mysterious. Yes, who's going to invite separation? We can only understand it theoretically. If we say absence makes the heart grow fonder, sometimes we see this. If you want a little parallel, a crude example, sometimes people do this in playing with children. Lovers might even do it, but let's stick with children. They put them temporarily into some anxiety, like a naughty uncle or something. They hide them, and and then they go, see, I'm here. They want to see them in that intense state of desperation. So it's a very delicate subject matter, and almost inconceivable that the devotees of Vrindavan, that they have to experience separation from Krishna. And there's some very heart-rending descriptions of that. But Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur, ever our savior when it comes to these kind of things, offers an almost like parallel universe type explanation. Because he says, when Akrura took Krishna out of Vrindavan, we're told like, Nanda and Yashoda, they do not eat they're unable to feed themselves. Their house is like full of cobwebs. They haven't bathed, they haven't changed their clothes. Some friends come and like forcefully, like when you feed someone soup or something, they like, just to like keep them alive. It's so horrific. It's beyond the imagination, the level of the consequences of the level of their separation. He mentions this when Uddhava comes to visit, because when Uddhava comes to visit, it seems like everything's wonderful. And he's saying, because these two things are running in parallel. Like, this is how they really feel and what's going on, and they can put on a show that everything's okay also, just like we do in this world. But he's saying, so they run in parallel, so that Uddhava could see that like flowing rivers, dancing peacocks, everything looks great, but actually there's this other side that's just totally horrible and terrible that would just break your heart to even, conceive. Because as Mahaprabhu says in the sloka, na prema gandhasti dharapi meharo krandami sobhagya param prakashna. And Guru Maharaj put it this way, saying, Krishna Prem is not a thing in this world. The others look Krishna Prem Jambunada Hema. A Kaitava Krishna Prem Jambunada means there are legendary rivers of gold in the heavenly planets. So, there's description of the planet where there are trees that have elephant-sized mangoes, that when they drop to the ground and they only have juice, the juice comes out and forms these rivers of gold. So, but what he's saying here is like saying, Krishna Prem, it's not a thing in this world like those rivers, legendary rivers of gold in heaven. Maybe there, but not here. It doesn't exist here. Yet that is what we are searching for. And Guru Maharaj put it this way, and this is the key to understanding, that if one actually has Krishna Prem, then it's impossible to tolerate separation. One will have to die. It's that, he said, heart swallowing. That if you have it, any type of separation would cause death. So then the devotees will say, and the fact that I'm alive, that means I must not have it. That's their thinking. Here I am alive, that means I don't have Krishna Prem. Because if I had it, be separated for a moment, you would have to drop dead. You'd be unable to sustain your existence. So it's a very peculiar thing. We're told elsewhere, why? Because the devotees know the 10th stage of separation is death. There's like stage 1, 2, 3, 4. The 10th stage is death. That means unable to, they just can't live another moment without. That means they've reached the most, and the zenith point, the most intense point. Why do they not die? Because they do everything for Krishna, and they know that would make Krishna sad. So they go on in this near death-like condition. And it's from that position, there's the maximum amount of pressure upon their love and affection. Then, Jnana Dipena Vasudha, then he reveals himself to them. And then how much joy is flooded into their hearts of their bodies that were in like a death-like position, dehydrating without Krishna Prem. So Krishna likes this level of intensity, and so do we. Nobody goes to a movie where everything's just like happy, 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 beginning, middle, and end. Even Disney movies are not like that. They have an arc, like things are happy, then something goes wrong, right? And then everyone's crying, and then it's happy in the end. That every good thing is like that. The best love songs, what they call torch songs, where the person singing, it's as if they're going to die if they're not reunited with the lover. Just as happy, happy, happy all the time stuff, no one really wants that. They may say they want that, but only a child would say that. So the joy of reunion, one of the examples given is saying, a mother which is with her child, and then if she starts thinking like, maybe she sees a news report about someone's child was kidnapped. And she thinks, oh my God, what if that happened to my child? And pulls the child even closer. Right? At the thought of separation. So that is, I'm not making this up. It's in the Chaitanya Charitamritam, and for a reason. To tell us it's separation that yields the most superior type of Krishna consciousness. And so Saraswati Thakur, ever the expert, he's saying, our lives are only meaningful when we're serving those devotees who feel separation from Krishna. He just got right to the heart of the matter. It's interesting. And another place he may say, we're Krishna-loving people. I like that, and other things. But here, he's going right to the point. Who are we really? What is our life and aspiration in the service of? Those who feel intense separation from Krishna. How much so? Even at the thought of being separated from Krishna is too much for them. Could make them faint. Think about that. The thought of being separated from Krishna could make them lose consciousness. He's saying, those people, they have real love for Krishna. Not these posers who go around telling you about the whatever. So it's like hidden in plain sight. Right? The open secret. The key to understanding everything is separation. In separation, like in photography and portraiture, you can focus on a subject and blur everything else. Right? That's very popular right now. Right? So you focus on the subject, and everything else is bokeh or blurred. Right? That's tantamount to union with Krishna. In union with Krishna, he alone is the focal point, and everything else is blurred, you can say. But we know, if we follow this photographic example, there's something else called infinite depth of field. And when you have infinite depth of field, everything is in focus, right? Not just the subject and then everything else is blurred. Every infinite depth of field brings everything into focus. So in union is tantamount to that. There's Krishna, exclusive focus, everything else blurred, soft focus, best. Right? In separation, they achieve infinite depth of field, meaning that everything is a source of remembrance of Krishna. Nothing, as we're in the opposite, like where everything makes us forget Krishna, just about, right? Every last thing makes us forget Krishna. They're in a situation where everything is a reminder of Krishna. That is their Maha Bhagavata, like vision. Right? Like we were talking the other day about the auspicious signs and inauspicious signs when traveling. But what I find interesting, and that'll be mentioned there, and this is something that thematically repeats, actually. There are like Leelic descriptions of things, Puranic descriptions of things, and the original. Right? So in this case, the original is Srimati Radharani. She's scanning the environment and she's looking for, as I said, Sulakshana, means auspicious signs or indications, that she's looking to see, is it favorable to meet Krishna? Am I seeing the signs that indicate there will be meeting with Krishna? That's how what she's looking, how she's interpreting things. Or is there something that, say she sees something that seems to indicate it's unfavorable for meeting. And that causes her heart to become sad or full of lamentation. That yields superior substance in Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness is very peculiar. You make progress in Krishna consciousness as you lament your lack of Krishna consciousness. It's not a never-ending celebration of achievement in that sense. But the awakening to the degree that you are not Krishna conscious yields progress in Krishna consciousness. If we lament lost opportunities, it yields, it's a progressive position in Krishna consciousness. In the Brihad Bhagavatamritam of Sanatana Goswami, when he's concluding perhaps the first section, he's saying the real rasic devotees of the Lord, they alone understand the joy and the superiority of viraha, of separation. That if Krishna consciousness is about depth of love, Hladini, what is that? The sar of Hladini is prem, bhav, the sar of that, the cream of that, bhav, mahabhav, ultimately. Mahabhav means in this sense, the greatest heart. Who possesses the greatest heart, full of Krishna consciousness to the greatest degree, the greatest depth of heart? Srimati Radharani, Mahabhav Swarupini Radha Thakurani, Hladini Shakti personified. We're told that, so if this is about achieving the greatest depth of heart and magnitude of heart and intensity, Guru Maharaj reveals, and we're back in Golden Volcano, divine lava, that in separation, a greater depth and magnitude and intensity of heart is achieved than in union. Radharani, usually she's crying, but stops after a while in separation. But this time, she cannot stop crying. And the Guru Varga of Vrindavan are upset. Who are the Guru Varga? Nanda, Jashoda, Purnamasi, others. And everyone is afraid Radharani is going to leave the world. Right? The 10th stage of separation is death. So, they're wondering what to do. And Chandravali, her chief competitor, she comes and admits that Radharani is superior. And says, actually, if you do this, if you commit suicide, then none of us have any hope of ever seeing him again. We know you have the power to bring him back here. I don't have it, they don't have it, but you do. You alone have that power. And if we lose you, even though I compete with you all the time, if we lose you, we've lost everything. So I admit it. You're superior, and I'm begging you at your lotus feet, don't do this. And then we're told, mysteriously, Srimati Radharani stops crying. And then all of her tears spring out of the eyes of her servitors. Now they're all crying incessantly, and she's happy. Radharani and Braja Gopis, they want Krishna to come back to Vrindavan. They're not thinking, oh, separation produces a superior substance. That's can be said through analysis. But they want Krishna to be with them. Gopis, Braja Gopis, wanting Krishna to give up his kingly dress, the Dwarka king, and come back to them for their happy times on the banks of the Jamuna in Vrindavan, where he's Gopavesh, Venukar, Navakishore, Natabar, Narli Lahoyanurup with his Gopavesh, cowherd dress, the flute in his hands. That's what they like. Just to know that these things are there should give us some encouragement to be attentive to our present. And that's what Grover said. Just we're not qualified to discuss them other than in summary form, not to go into detail. He's saying, but just knowing that should give us enough encouragement, inspiration in our present position to dedicate and rededicate ourselves. The real test is, what does the heart produce in separation from Krishna? And that's the test now. Our unfortunate situation is it doesn't bother us that we're separated from Krishna. That's a sad, pathetic thing. But in time, it will. So I like to say that in the Gopi Gita, the sloka, Tavakatamritam tapta jivanam kavibir iritam kalmashapaham Sravana Mangalam Srimadatatam Bhuvi Grananti Te Buridajana, that the Braja Gopis here, they're saying what is the cure for their suffering. What does their suffering condition do to? Separation from Krishna. But in that verse, Tava Katam, so they're saying, the talks about you, Tava Katamrita, our nectar, Tava Katamritam Tapta Jivana, life-giving nectar. We're on the verge of death. Then we talk about you and we're revived. We're as if resurrected from the dead. Right? And this relieves from all suffering. And I find it peculiar that it is a parallel to our situation. That we are also suffering on account of separation from Krishna. Right? They're suffering on account of separation from Krishna. If you had to distinguish one from the other in the most general way, you would say, well, their separation from Krishna is marked by remembrance, non-stop, continuous remembrance. Whereas our separation from Krishna is marked by forgetfulness. And therefore, we don't even understand the cause of our suffering. Right? Bayam ditiyad biniveshitat syat ishadapetas viparyo smriti. That's it. Forgetfulness of Krishna. It's mentioned. And the gopis come with the cure for this suffering, separation suffering. Tavakatam, talking about you, hearing about you. That brings relief to it brings relief to their hearts, it brings relief to our hearts. And they say, and puts an end to suffering. We're suffering in the material world on account of identification with our karmic circumstance and biological expression of the soul's delusion, the body. And they're saying, no, this awakens you to the prospect of your spiritual identity, then that suffering goes away. Shravana Mangalam, and it's the beginning of all auspiciousness, every one of his notes. The day that you heard about Krishna was the beginning of auspiciousness in your life. That's just the fact. We should celebrate that. We should mark that on the calendar. Like, here's the day that I first heard about Krishna. Shravana, and what? Shravana Mangalam, Srimadatana. And by hearing about him, then the heart becomes filled with gold, with treasure. Muralishwar and I were in this place Petrozavodsk. Does that sound like a town? Yeah. And there's a big lake there. And we're staying in this flat. And it's like the guy's sister is not, it's like the mother and the son, but the sister's not. And I think I'm like staying in her room or something. You know, maybe she had to surrender her room while I was there. But she kind of like dutifully, you know, goes to the program every, you know. But then one night she going like, if you really want to help someone, she goes, you know, you could go out and like distribute food or clothing or things like this. Every night you sit here talking about Krishna for hours. Like you're doing something. And that's equivalent to doing something. So if you really want to do something, you know, like make a pot of beans or something and go out and, you know, and soup some grishka or something and go like give it out to people, you know, like really help the people. Not with all this Krishna stuff. And I thought, like, yeah, it's because you don't think there's any value in this that you can say that. But actually, those who know what is what, know this is the valuable thing that you can give to someone that is to be got. Pravishta karna randrena swaram bhavam suroruham dunoti shamalam Krishna shalayasya yatasharat. Like we're told, Krishna conception enters through the ear. It's like a channel from the ear, and Guru said sound goes to the heart. So you have to be careful what sound you listen to. Enters the ear, goes to the heart. Hear from the devotee of Krishna, through the ear, touch the heart. And what does Radharani say? Yadanucharita lila karna piyusha viprut sakrid dadvana danda dharma vinashta. Then your material existence is finished. Right? Today or tomorrow. Sudurlabha bhagavata hiloke satsanga sevadi. Sevadir means treasure. And the treasure that you can get in human life, you get from the rare connection with a devotee of Krishna. What do? They tell you about Krishna. You hear something about Krishna, and forever your heart is touched. Right? And nothing can compete with that, ever. And no matter what happens after that, you'll, at some point in your sojourn and material existence, you'll remember the sweetness of Krishna when your heart was touched by hearing about Krishna, and seek more Krishna, a connection with Krishna. You know, consciousness is not like located in the spiritual world. It's not like on a map or something, right? It's all consciousness. So it's not like it's so many, you know, light years away. Metaphorically, but not actually. That's why when we hear about Krishna from his devotees, Vrindavan can awaken in our hearts. There's a famous verse, Narottam Thakur, wherever the devotees are, that's where Vrindavan is. They can awaken Vrindavan in our hearts. And Vrindavan, Radha, Padman, Giridham, Vrindavan, Jaranam, is the place embellished with the lotus footprints of Radharani, means Radha Dasyam, all these wonderful things. By superior association, we improve. That's true in everything. So, in other words, being with someone who is a connoisseur, your taste will improve. That's the wonderful thing about association. But what does it say about their Vaishnava sparsha money, touchstone in the sense of like philosopher's stone. Something comes in contact with it and becomes transformed. That's the sort of association that we seek. But then Guru Maharaj says something very important on the Sangha side. So what is that association? Physical proximity? No. Just social interaction? No. He says, Sangha means seva. That's what it means. When one of the last times when I was leaving Guru Maharaj and maybe not going to see him again, and he was encouraging me to serve in separation, and saying and mentioning Rupa Goswami Mahaprabhu, how heartbreaking it was for Rupa to know Mahaprabhu is going to Vrindavan, and they will be going to Vrindavan and Mahaprabhu will be staying in Puri. But Guru Maharaj said about association not being based on physical proximity, he mentioned lice. They couldn't be any closer to you, right? They've burrowed into your skin. But the consciousness and our consciousness are worlds apart. Then the parallel was, we may physically be worlds apart, but through the plane of consciousness and oneness of heart, we're together. And really, we are. We're talking about Krishna consciousness, the plane of Krishna consciousness. But here he said, so what does Sangha really mean? Service, right? And particularly with higher association. When you come in connection with a genuinely superior Vaishnav, the appropriate response is to offer yourself in service. To say, what service can I do for you? So, forever, our aspiration is to be the assistants of those servitors of the devotees of Vrindavan who feel separation from Krishna. How beautifully put that distinguishing factor.